is incredibly important for us in this move to online learning. I'm pleased to be here representing the British Council education team with Michael and Mark. Natalia, I'd like to thank for helping us for technical help. The people you're going to hear today, though, are my colleague Sonia, who's the child protection, the safeguarding lead for us in Spain and British Council, and our speaker. I'm very happy that Hannah has been able to join us today. Hannah is the senior teacher in the British Council Young Learner Centre, where she's safeguarding. She's one of the 2 people responsible for safeguarding up to 2,000 children, up to 5,000 children, including her colleagues in secondary. That is a big task anytime, but particularly now that every lesson is going online. So, thank you, Hannah, for coming. I'll hand over to you, and thank you for being able to share your experience, both you and Sonia, with us.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Hannah, and I'm the senior teacher for primary in Madrid, and as Anne said, and also the safeguarding lead. Our presentation today is on safeguarding children during this difficult time. Okay, so during COVID-19. So the first thing that I would like you to do is think about what you think safeguarding is. If you could use the chat to write in what you think, the first word that springs to mind when you think.
Now, Hannah, I'll just say, I should have told them before, I'm sorry, the chat is not currently open. We've opened the preguntas and respuestas. You can find that in speech bubbles at the bottom, and that's going to function as our chat.
Okay.
Right into there.
So if you could write into the preguntas y respuestas, or questions and answers, the first word that springs to mind when you think of safeguarding.
We haven't got anybody writing yet, but I suppose it's quite a big question for them. So perhaps.
Yeah, a bit of.
There
you go. Thank you, Monica. Okay, so Carolina's security, Monica, making sure our kids' rights are going to be respected. Okay. Just leave it slightly longer. Okay, well, thank you, Monica and Carolina. So safeguarding is about making sure that children are safe online, safe, essentially, and doing everything that we can within our power to make sure that they are safe. Okay. So as we move on, I'm going to move on to the next slide now, and this is from a little boy in the British Council school, and during one of the first online classes, he actually asked the teacher this. Okay, if you could just read that. Okay, so as you can see, children are affected by the current situation, and the little graphic there, I think, really explains it, that this little boy has processed the virus as if it's a little monster, and he's waiting anxiously at the door to protect his family. Okay, and it's how we can reassure him that that we're doing everything we can. Okay. One of the things that we talked about when we looked at this anecdote the first time was to reassure him that actually this situation has happened before and adults are dealing with it. Okay, and adults will find the solution for you, so you don't have to worry about it because adults are thinking about it. And the other one was that the things that he can control, the things that are within his control, for example, would be that he's being as kind as he can possibly be, okay, at the moment. So looking at the reaction of that child, I would imagine, I want you to think about how old you think the child would be. So he's weaving information about the virus into a kind of narrative, and he's got it, he's assimilating it like it's a monster. So we're going to quickly look through the reactions by age group. I'm aware that my colleague Andy used some of these slides before, but we really think that this is very, very important, that we look at the possible reactions and processing ability by age. So if this is familiar, bear with me, we will come on to other information. So at 2 to 3 year olds, they don't really understand what's going on, and they will probably just adapt to it as if it's a normal situation. In fact, I have a friend who has a just under 2-year-old, and she said she's actually been really, really enjoying the clapping at 8 o'clock and the singing, and it's something that she just looks forward to. So she's not bothered, she's not having a difficult time, she's actually just adapting. With the very young learners here, the early years, it's maybe more the parents that we've got to be aware of, okay? They're working from home as well as looking after very young children. So that's one of the points to look through. By 4 to 6, they still believe in Father Christmas. And so if we give any information about the virus or how to cope with it, it needs to be age appropriate. So if we go back to the example, I imagine that the little boy would fit into this category, 4 to 6, because he's been processing it as a monster. And he needs to know, don't worry, that adults will be sorting it out and we will find a solution. So at the same time that we give information, we do want to avoid lying to them, but we wouldn't go into detail about things that they can't really understand and they can't control. Okay. And again, it's at this age where you should be looking for signs that perhaps the parents are struggling if they're working from home. The other area to watch out for with this age group is that actually if they are the eldest child and they have got siblings, that they could be being asked to be more responsible and autonomous than they have been previously. Okay. So as we move on to 6 or 9, they've actually started to be able to process and understand their own feelings and other people's feelings. And one of the things that they can feel is guilt. So that, for example, that they know that one person can infect another person. So for example, grandparents, and they might be feeling quite vulnerable about that because up until this moment, they've very much been told, you know, to be caring and to give hugs and help out if somebody's in that situation. So it's also to be mindful of the fact that actually it could be rocking some of the fundamental things that they have actually, so the ground, the foundations of what they've been told to do, for example, care for grandparents. And again, another sign to look out for is that they are being asked to be very responsible for smaller, younger siblings. From 9 to 12, and my personal class fall into this age category, they are very much able to support at home, and mine have been really good. They've been helping out with their parents. They love feeling useful. And I haven't really had any worries reported in my age group for the class that I teach. But what I have seen is that they are quite focused on our learning. So they are using this, they're using this time as an opportunity to really get things done. And a lot of mine are working really, really hard because I think it is a break, perhaps, where they might have been looking after their siblings. One of the things that you need to start watching for at this age group is that they might be struggling to pay attention because they've got so much going on online. So obviously, to keep classes very dynamic and try and do all the things that we do normally, like movement, etc. But to be mindful that yes, they are children, and that this might be difficult for them. Okay, so moving on to over 12s, they are the ones who probably show an increased level of awareness of how serious this is, and they may be anxious. They're more likely to miss their friends as well. So the children in my class are 11. They like seeing each other online, but they're fine. As they get older, they probably are missing their friends because there is that general shift from being in the family and reliant on mum or dad or siblings, and it shifts towards friends. So this is kind of compounded as well by the fact that perhaps, so 12 and upwards, they're not really communicating with their parents as much as they should do. Okay. As they get older, they are all actually much more exposed to online risks. So things like gambling and pornographic material is actually a safeguarding issue. And because they lack the function to perhaps plan or understand the consequences of an action, it has been reported, obviously, around the world that some children have been sharing the Zoom links from their classes, and therefore they are exposing not only themselves but the group to risks. Okay. We've had 6 cases so far where children were at risk, and 5 were related to upper secondary. So that's 15 plus. And that's really the big watch group at the moment. Okay, so what's our duty of care as schools? Duty of care is really our responsibility as individuals. I think all of us as individuals, we don't want anything bad to happen to children, but then we are also individuals who are teachers, so it's also our responsibility and the way we react to making sure that they are as safe as we can make it for them, and then obviously as the school. Okay, so if you could have a look at the Q&A again, could you think about how much time have you spent in your location brainstorming the safeguarding since the 11th of March? Okay, if you could just let us know in the Q&A. Okay. So, no responses so far. Oh, hang on. No, I spoke too soon.
Yeah, you've got...
Okay.
And I think the question, some people were kind of doubting if you think that it's for the teachers or for their own children.
They're doubting if it's for the teachers. So how much time have you spent as a teacher brainstorming safeguarding issues? And so for teachers, 3 or 4. Okay, we try, and we've had some great initiatives. That's really, really good news. So could you tell me which areas you focused on? Okay, well, let's move on then with the presentation. So
you've got natural and social science there as a comment, but maybe you could pick up on that later, Hannah.
Okay, natural and social science. 1 at the beginning of this situation, and now moving closer to 5. Okay, so as the situation has developed, I think, yes, we've been thinking about these things more and more, and that's great to know. I want to move on to this slide now, if I can, our framework, and this is how we do it at the British Council. So platforms we work with. Brilliant. Okay, and I will come back to that. So our framework at the British Council is we try to have measures in place to prevent both unintentional and intentional harm. So intentional harm would be where you've got deliberate actions and you're talking about predators who are actively seeking out ways to have contact with children, which could be extremely harmful. And then you have the by accident harm, you know, so for example, sometimes it can be lack of a policy or a procedure, or it could be that, for example, something to do with care and supervision, or for example, staff not following the policy. So we had an example, for example, a teacher who wanted to help the students access and then shared the Zoom link, but then that's obviously an unintentional risk because the Zoom link could go out into the wider world. All right. Also, it's things like when somebody drops out of the class and then comes back in, and it could be someone else. So it's also making sure that we're vigilant in terms of adapting our own teaching at the moment as well. Okay, so at the British Council, our approach is that any risk that a teacher has, any risk that they think that they see or they feel something that's not right, they're encouraged to come and talk to me or my colleague and go through their concerns. And our overall aim is to keep the risks at the prevent level along the bottom. And then as risks get more serious, if it was a disclosure, it would move up into the danger zone where I would contact Sonia and we ask for help, and then the highest level where the authorities are involved. But very, very few cases get up to here. Our main approach is to keep everything down here and to prevent anything from happening. Okay, so whilst we manage risk, we know that it can't be avoided entirely, and it's what, especially with the situation we find ourselves in now online, we are having to react very quickly to things as they develop and as they come up, which I imagine you will be too. Okay, but what we want to do is make sure that we're safeguarding children in the virtual classrooms and that we're preventing the risks. So one of the bottom tag here says the importance of a clear code of conduct. Now that's been a really, really key thing that we have had here. We as teachers have a very, very clear code of conduct of what's acceptable and what's not. And another thing that we have had is a code of conduct for both the students, so what they can do, what the expectation is for them while they're in class, and also then for their parents, because we've got a situation where we're closer now than we ever have been. So this promotes safety for teachers, students and parents and carers, okay? And we have a framework for remote learning now, which includes risk assessment for online platforms, which I think somebody mentioned before, updated online safety policy, which is it's reacting to things as they come in. Again, our student code of conduct, which we would really recommend. And also we've had to think about what happens if only one student turns up and how we manage that one-to-one situation. And looking at the use of cameras, so making sure that the camera is turned on and that you can see that that child is there and receiving the class. Just a note here, there's going to be a checklist available very soon, and that will be shared, as will this PowerPoint. Everything that you're seeing will be available to you. Okay, so protecting pupils from harm. It's important that all staff who interact with children, including online interaction, continue to look out for signs that a child may be at risk. Okay, so we've talked through anything that you see, that you go to the person responsible for that in your school and highlight it. Again, it goes back to this duty of care. We don't want anything negative to happen, and it's much better if we just talk it through with somebody and assess that situation than not saying anything. Okay. So the level of interaction with children needs to continue in the virtual environment, and they need to have an open way of reporting concerns or worries. But obviously it's how we handle that in a virtual class, which we will go on to later. There's also the increased issues of mental health, which can change one person's behaviour. So it's looking out for that, that they're more withdrawn, that they their behaviour isn't as good, for example, and that's the kind of type of thing that perhaps there's an indication of an underlying problems. Okay, support for pupils and students in the current circumstances can include existing provisions in schools, although they might be delivered in different formats, so over the phone. So making sure that you know what the routes are in the school to access the special support. Okay, and then again, the code of conduct to ensure that all staff understand the responsibility of keeping children safe and have clear reasons and procedures to report concerns, and that that anything that you see that you think is a risk is reported. Okay, so the dangers. So there's increased vulnerability or risk, and those come from things like they could be related to the well-being and mental health of the child. There could be risk factors within the family. There's the obvious online risk factors. And then a huge one is the lack of protective factors at the moment of just if there's risk factors within the family, that you're not going to school, that you're not accessing free meals, that you're not getting that wraparound support outside of the home that perhaps you were. In terms of well-being and mental health risk factors, it's things like eating disorders. So, you know, there might be issues around food. It could also be things like they're sleeping more or sleeping less. So looking out for things like they're tired. But yeah, the biggest one as well, the biggest thing that's affecting things at the moment is the fact that they haven't got the other protective factors around them, which means that we really, really need to be much more vigilant online. Okay, so some of these will be solved by competent parents who are coping with their own worries and anxiety. but not all children have this network of support, which is where it's vital that if we see something, it is reported. Okay, so in the very unlikely situation of a disclosure, these should be reported in the normal way through your schools and organisations. So you need to remember to receive the information, reassure the student, react, which would be to tell the focal point or head of department or the head, and then record. So it's very, very important when you do this, that when you're receiving something, that you stay calm and listen. Okay, you're receiving as much information. At this point, we need facts. So the date, the time, where, how often, things like that. In the situation that we're in at the moment, try your best to finish the class. Okay, so in a sensitive way, if a disclosure comes up in class, you can say, yes, redirect the children to another topic, and you can use a breakout room or the personal chat to talk to that student to say that you will come back to them. So you would reassure the child, either in the chat and then after the class, that it's, or if necessary in the class, ensure that they know that, yes, that does sound difficult. Okay, and if needed, in front of the group. Things to never say is that this would remain a secret. Getting help involves other people, but especially for teenagers, I think it's very important to make this clear that that it's not a secret, but only the minimum amount will be told in order to help you solve this situation. So the reaction is to inform the relevant person in your school, and recording is writing down what has happened. Date, time, who, where, as much detail as possible so that you can send this to the relevant person in your. It's also worth talking about at this time that receiving disclosures is something that's not a nice experience to go through. And it's worth making sure that you breathe slowly and try and think slowly as much as possible. So you calm yourself and then deal with it. Okay. So
Hannah, I'm just going to interrupt for everyone to say we have opened the chat now. So probably as you're going on to more detail, people might be remembering questions that they have, and they can post them in the chat. We didn't think we had it open, but you've got it there now. If people want to start asking questions, they remember.
In the okay.
In the chat. Yeah, we will tell you. We'll tell you if they come up. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so one of the things that's particular to the situation that we have at the moment with online is that families can be under a great deal of stress. They are working from home. They are perhaps in a position where they don't know if their jobs are secure. There's a lot of stress that could be going on at the moment. We've also had to deal with things like where there has been a divorce or there would have been a recent moving out, and then they haven't been able to because of the situation. So there are some situations, the situation is, I think, quite stressful for most people anyway, but there are some situations where this containment of the family unit in whatever state it's in has been particularly difficult, especially if somebody was going to be moving out. The other thing is that we've never been so close to them. So I don't see my students in their home setting normally, and they don't see me in my home setting. And because we are at home, life happens. Like your brother or sister could have had a temper tantrum before, and you've been being responsible for them, and you're trying to be a good big brother or sister and sort that out. or, you know, things happen just before the class, and that could put you in a funny state in the class. Wherever we can, as I said before, you finish the class first and then deal with the disclosure, okay? And the other thing is to seek advice and help for yourself too. So as individuals, we don't want anything to happen to a child, so it's our duty of care to report it, but also we need to look after ourselves as well in terms of asking for, seeking advice, okay, and talking it through with a colleague. So really, I think if there are any other questions, I would open it up to the floor to see if there are any questions that we haven't answered, or anything that you would like to discuss.
Probably
yeah.
Go.
Sonia, I was going to say, Sonia, would you like to add anything or give any examples about, you know, we've covered quite a lot of ground.
Yeah, probably I would like to say that in Spain, the tradition of having somebody in charge of safeguarding within schools is probably something not usual. It's probably something the UK has been running for many years, and there is always a safeguarding lead within the schools, so somebody who takes care of these things. Probably many of the things you are hearing here are more in relation to the council of the school or the person who is kind of in charge of the kind of the head of school or something. But probably what we really want to highlight is that there is a responsibility from everybody, and that the current context is very tricky for some children. Some children have very well structured families at home and everything may be really good, but some children are really struggling hard at the moment, and just the contact even through a screen with the teacher is not just the educational part of it, it's also the part of just knowing that there is another adult having a look at them, taking care of them. So probably easy things like monitoring attendance, if a child is coming, if a child is not coming, just probably offering the children a space and a place where they can talk to somebody about things that distress them are really useful. Here we have the example Hannah mentioned about the boy sitting next to the door. This boy reported it to the teacher because he thought, well, wow, the teacher is the person in the world who must know about things, so he should know about this. So I probably really interested in knowing also from all of you. I don't know, Anne and Maureen, if we finally can open up the microphones, but it would be probably really interesting to know a little bit the experience our teachers in the room are having. Yes, at the moment.
Absolutely. What we can do is, if you'd like to speak and share your experience, if you raise your hands, we can unmute the microphones, and that might be easier for sharing the experience that we have in the room. Would anyone like to contribute?
While people are thinking about questions, Hannah, maybe there's one question it's actually from me, but it's something the teachers I deal with asked me. Could you just tell a little bit more about the code of conduct for children and for parents? What does that mean? What's in that? And that gives people the time to raise their hand and think of a question.
Okay, so the code of conduct that we have for students highlights what we expect from them. So we have a behaviour code, and we have a behaviour policy and a code of conduct normally, so that these are things that are referred to at the beginning of term and established, and perhaps like rules and routines that are negotiated with the children. And then when we moved online, in the first classes, we were very keen to make sure that we tried to keep the routines as much as the same as we could, as similar as we could to the normal classes. And also that we reiterated how important it is that we're behaving respectfully to our fellow students, and that we have a duty, for example, if we think somebody's being bullied, that we would talk to the teacher about it. We went through all of these things to, I think it was in terms of the child, it's actually reassuring that those rules that applied in a classroom still applied in the virtual setting. So it was reiterating our expectations for them. Also for parents, we decided to add the code of conduct for parents, because with smaller children, the parents are way more present in the class. So with early years, they're actually there helping the child on the computer. And then with younger primary levels, where the digital literacy perhaps is not even emergent, the parents have had to help navigate the classes, help the children navigate the classes via the computer. But it's also that we wanted to let the parents know that the teacher was still responsible for behaviour, and that the parents should take the lead with that, and that they don't interrupt in the class, etc. So that everybody had guidelines, clear guidelines of what was expected of them during these classes. And so far it's been very successful. We haven't had any reports of parents interrupting classes. And I think in some instances, parents have actually maybe learnt from how we deal with behaviour in the class. So for example, redirection and positive praise for the students who are doing what was asked of them. I don't know if there's any more.
No, not there. Are there any, perhaps, I mean, if people are still thinking about their own situations, Hannah, what has been the biggest challenge for you? You know, it sounds like for safeguarding, there have been many challenges for you, moving 2,000 children into an online situation. What has been the biggest challenge in this period, and how perhaps have you, managed to survive the challenge?
With specific reference to safeguarding.
Safeguarding.
Yes. I suppose it's been to really make sure that everybody knows that the things that we've been doing anyway, the things that we care about, I always, when I'm talking to the teachers in sessions on safeguarding, we have instincts for a reason. So if your instinct is something isn't quite right, then come and let us know about that. It has also in some ways been an eye-opener, because there was a situation that we had been dealing with before with a student who was being particularly naughty, and we ended up having to speak to his mum, and then the teacher contacted me once we moved online to say that yes, he's kind of shut away, and she doesn't seem to interact with him a lot, and she said that she thought that explained the behaviour before. So in some ways, because we're closer, it's giving us more of an insight into perhaps things that are going on.
Yeah, that's an unusual outcome, that you feel that in some ways the teachers are closer in some ways than when and because of the contact with the parents. Yeah.
So one of my worries was that we would have parents interjecting in classes or saying, can you just give me a report? But we haven't. Honestly, parents have been very supportive in terms of how they've been helping their child to navigate the classes, and using the proper channels to contact if they do need something.
Someone's mentioned in the chat, Esther, if you're there,
Yeah.
You've also gone on this journey from 1 to 5 as the time's gone by. I don't know if you'd feel like sharing that. If you want to share that, perhaps you could put your hand up and we'll give you or you feel able to share your journey. Or anybody else, some experience, some positive things that have happened in terms of safeguarding?
Maria Sonia Garcia Lopez has raised her hand.
I don't see her. Oh yeah, okay. Maria? Maria, can you hear us? Are you can now speak. Oh no? Maureen, can you manage to give her? My options aren't working to give her the microphone.
Mine's either. The unmute is not. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll try. Hang on.
Just unmute.
No.
No,
Ooh.
I think that might be only Natalia that can do that.
No.
I don't know.
No, I'm afraid I can't do it.
No. Sorry, Maria, if we can get that. It's the way that the webinar's set up. We don't. We've set it up in a way that panelists don't have many options. But if we can get you in a moment. In the meantime, Maria, perhaps if you've got, could you write it in the chat so at least we know about your experience? Again, while we're waiting, Hannah, is there anything from this experience that you will take back as a team when you go back to face-to-face learning and safeguarding the children in a face-to-face situation?
I think the main one is the one I'd mentioned before. So I had a teacher and they were dealing with bad behaviour in the class. And I did keep reiterating, look, sometimes the children are misbehaving because they feel safe, because this is an environment where they can let go a bit. And I think that this particular teacher then wasn't really so on board at that point. But then because they've now seen the situation at home, they rang and said, like, yes, I really understand now what you mean about that child has got his home environment, and that how actually whatever that home environment is, that those children do bring that to school sometimes. And again, just as some things could have happened just before the video, it's also things like that that could have happened at school or at home before they come, and the things that affect their behaviour, and just being mindful of them as little human beings that are processing everything, and some things that they don't really understand yet, and they haven't got the emotional awareness to maybe process at the moment, and that can manifest itself in bad behaviour. So I think that's a really big take home for me, and I think some of our teaching team here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it goes back to this thing that we were actually finding out much more about our students than before in many ways.
Yes, yeah, and because as well, we are. I mean, because we're sharing parts of our lives at the moment. But yeah, and on the whole, though, the online experience has been very positive, and that it goes back to what Sonia was saying, that actually if you think about the situation, so on the 11th of March everything changed, and then everything's up in the air and it's all a bit strange. And then the feedback that we had was, so the children just seeing you for that hour and getting their class, it's not just about content, it's also about the routine, it's also about seeing another person, seeing an adult that you like and you enjoy sharing time with, and getting back into that sense of normality, although it has been changed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is any other panelists, would you like to add anything? And then, we'll see if there's any more questions. We don't seem to be able to open mics. Sonia, would you like to say anything just to finish?
More than happy to do so. So probably my feeling is that the situation at the moment is not going to finish quickly in terms of schooling. So we have still a lot of challenges in front of us. It does not seem likely that the majority of children go back to school until September. And this means that we have May, June, July, and August, so 4 months in front of us, where children are going to remain connected to many of their peers and also to the teachers, mainly online. So probably during the summer, they always have kind of a break, and probably those who are in teaching know how children come back from this break in different kind of conditions and with different kind of ways. And obviously they need this break, but this break is going to be this year very long. So I would probably also highlight that there is a need to think carefully from September on, the best way to ensure that children are identified who may be vulnerable. We know that we may have people who struggle in terms of money after the summer. Many people are losing their jobs. Families who so far have not a need to get support from social services will need to have it now in place. And we also know that many families will suffer from kind of much more kind of also mental health conditions due to the whole situation. So probably the thing is, which is the role we want to play as teachers, as individuals? We obviously can rely also on the social services, and they are there who are going to help us and support us. But we can be probably one of these protective factors that is still functioning after the crisis when a lot of other things are failing. So I would really like to encourage teachers to take this into account and be the adult who made a difference to the life of one of their students.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for tying up there. I would like to say thank you to all of you for coming to our webinar. You know, I'm impressed that in such a short time, Hannah and Sonia have made me think more about safeguarding from the children's point of view, right, from how it feels to be in their shoes. And perhaps I'm taking the message that we can do safeguarding as well, if not better, online. With a little bit of organisation, and thank you for the practical suggestions, you know, the code of conduct, the way to report, and hopefully bring some of that back to face-to-face teaching. So we're going to leave you now. Have a nice afternoon and have a nice day off. For people who do have a day off tomorrow, that includes me. And enjoy your walk on Saturday, no, and Sunday if you haven't had one yet.